In order to use PHP and to learn how to use PHP, you need to have a web server installed. I have the XAMPP, also called XAMPP, control panel launched, and as you can see, I have started the Apache web server. So this is the web server that will be running on my machine that will allow me to interpret and execute the PHP code. Eventually, we will also be starting MySQL database server. However, we don't need that right now. When you install XAMPP on your computer, it will go on your C drive into the XAMPP folder. You can see there are many different directories or folders that will also be installed. Here we see the files for the Apache web server, the FTP FileZilla application, and here is htdocs. If I click on htdocs, it will show me the files and folders inside it. This is the root of the web server. This is where all of your files need to be stored in order to be executed on the web server. Notice, I have a folder inside htdocs called Muroc Text. That is where I will be learning the code that comes with the text. Okay, back to htdocs. When the web server accesses a folder, it will search for what is called a default file. And there are several. One is the traditional index.html file. However, an index.php would take precedence over index.html. Now, if I were to click on this file, it would not work because we are not in the web server. Notice it's asking me, how do you want to open this file? It doesn't know. However, if it was a static HTML file, it would automatically launch it in the browser because the browser is the default application in which to execute an HTML file. So let's go down to the Muroc Text. Now when I installed the files and it installs them into different folders. The book apps that accompanies each chapter. So this is my first chapter, CH01 product discount. Notice there is an HTML file, a CSS file, and a PHP file. You can have a combination of PHP and HTML files. You can also have JavaScript files, CSS files, and other files. You can put them in the same folder or you can organize them into their own folders. Even though this is an index.html file, and if I click on it, it will launch the web page. Notice, this is how you know. If you see file, : / or a C and a path, that is a direct path to your hard drive. Even though we see XAMPP here, that is not a web server. Now let's take a look at this code real fast. Here we see some HTML and we have a form. The action of the form is a PHP file. So when I click on the button, I will be sending data to this PHP file from the form. The PHP file will process that and display it back to me as HTML. So if I were to type in something here, t-shirt, all right, list price $10, my discount is 10%, and if I were to calculate that, look what I'm getting. Here again, I am calling a PHP file. Now, in your browser, depending on the operating system, you might not even see the raw code. It might ask you, what do you want to use to open it? Or it might try to download something. All right, what I see is the raw HTML and the raw PHP. because we cannot process that here. All right, so in order to execute a PHP file, we need to type in the word localhost. Now, localhost is going to take us to the dashboard. Remember, when we looked at htdocs, I said there is a default PHP file. And what that is doing, that is redirecting me over here to the dashboard. So there's two ways around that. The first way is if you know the folder name, which is Muroc text, I can type that in to my path. I can see the directory. Now, the reason I can see the directories is because here's my folder. It is right, the first folder in the top level underneath htdocs. Because I have no default file here. If I had a default index.html or index.php, that would load. All right, so that's one way of accessing your files. You would really need to know a little bit about your directory structure. The other way, and I don't necessarily recommend doing this because I think the dashboard is very nice. If I were, here again, I'm back in htdocs. This is my default file that loads and redirects me to the dashboard. If I were to rename this, then all I need to do is call it index.x. All right, that is no longer a default file. Therefore, we will see our directory structure. All right, so let's test that out. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to type in localhost. And there we go. What did I tell you? All right, so now I can go to Muroc text. And now I can go to book apps. And now I can go to chapter 1. And there's my form. Now, when I type something in, and I'll type in my t-shirt again. There, it remembered everything. And that was $10. And here we have calculate. Now it's working because we are working on the web server. So this is what you want to start getting used to. Getting used to launching XAMPP, taking a look at what you have in htdocs, and getting the feel for executing the files on your local host web server. One other thing I would like to point out, you also have a TCP/IP address, 127.0.0.1, which also is the same as typing in localhost.